Hello gamers, it's Trevor here, and I wanted to do a brief video to show you guys what I did to make my own, not to make my own tracking hardware, but how I set up the software. But I thought I would show you more or less what I did to get to that point so you kind of know what I'm dealing with before you decide whether my setup would even be close to yours. My setup would be pretty close to what a track IR looks like, or also the hat track. And by that I mean, let me go over to this photo gallery here. By that I mean similar to this setup here. This, mine does not look like this exactly, but the dimensions are in this ballpark. You need to set this up kind of this way in order for this thing to work, as long as it's even close. Now, they do have some options in there that you can maybe get fancier, but if it's your first one, I would say don't get fancier. Try to make something in this ballpark. The exact dimensions aren't critical, but you want them to be kind of close to this. They should be in a straight line otherwise as you look at it from the front. Let me hit the back button and just mention this website, FreeTrack. It has some decent articles and whatnot that, game profiles, videos, things that might be beneficial to you. Like I said, it's also where I found this. Where did I forget exactly. I think this is on the forums. Yeah, forum index 1856. This is what I ended up building. This is just the electrical diagram of it, but this gave me enough confidence that I would know what I was doing. Shows you USB, how you would take a USB cable. Recommends you use a power supply. I don't use a power supply, but I have a powered USB hub. So I'm kind of hoping that provides some insulation from any kind of electrical issues. Once you have it worked out, you're not going to have electrical issues unless you have a short. And even then, you could hurt the computer. But if you have one of these fusible links in the positive side, it should just trip this link, which these reset themselves, so it should protect you at that point. You could also build it with a battery version. I'm not a big fan of battery, so I choose to do a wired version, and I'm glad I have. The thing stays plugged in all the time, really, and I don't worry about batteries running out on me, which is very annoying. Little tips here are kind of nice. Use your camera to see the infrared. Very nice little feature there. And there you go. And there's plenty of other videos. I don't mean to get into all of this, but if your setup looks anything like the hat track or track IR and is generally in that certain format, certain shape, that familiar C kind of shape, or an E might even be a better way to look at that, then my advice should be helpful, I hope. Like I have said, there are different kinds of software. Like this FreeTrack is even a kind of software. You could download that. I think there's Track No IR. There's other softwares out there, but I got the OpenTrack to work for me. And I downloaded it from this site, got it running on the computer, and no problem. The camera that I'm using is the PS3i on the first one that I did. So there's instructions online. A couple guys have some decent videos on how to do this. Anyway, you have to get in there behind this lens, take out the IR filter, and then you want to put in a light filter that lets the IR through. And apparently an old floppy disk is one of your options with that. And that's what I did. The next camera that I had set up, so after I kind of got everything working on the first computer, I wanted it on my second computer because that's where I, played different driving games. And I thought, let me try this a little different. So I tried to build a hat version, like this one. Let me click on that. Yeah, where I put it on a hat because I thought that might be, I'm not always playing with the headset. So I thought it might be nice. Really didn't work out though. I did end up attaching it to the hat with cardboard. You should. None of these goofy pictures in that gallery have anything on me as far as my setups. Literally, you'll find yourself looking around the house for crap to make this thing out of, which is kind of fun, I guess. I had fun with it. But in any event, the second camera that I went out and got was I started looking for more advice on a camera. I really didn't feel like waiting for eBay to send me one a week later. So I ended up finding one on Best Buy's website, and this was it. I didn't modify this one at all. All I did was put a piece of that filter paper on top of this to block out some of the light. This signal that we're looking at here is like a 7, 6, 7. The one that I get, this is on the PS3i. The one that I get here is much less. It's like a 1.9 or a 2, and it's in the basement. If this wasn't in the basement, I don't think that this would work so well. Just keep that in mind. So I'm not really advising that you go out and buy one of these, but if this is all you have in your house tonight and you're trying to get started, go for it. You know, put a little piece of filter. If you got an old floppy disk, put the thing over there and see if you can't get it set up. But I would recommend you have a pretty dark room. If you've got any lamps or windows behind you, you know, the daytime's like a whole different animal. There's a lot more infrared light bouncing off of things than you ever imagined. Let's just put it that way. So there you go. So that's my general setup. I'm just going to go back to this page real quick and come into here. So this is the meat of it. You can see we just started it up again. And what you want to get to is to get nice, worry about these 3 dots at first. You know, obviously worry about the camera picking them up. These green bars are showing the exact measurements. So it gives you a little idea. As I tilt my head up and side to side, you can see my octopus is moving, but that's because I got it all set up. And let's stop it for a second. You have some options here as to how you do it. If you're doing the point tracker, that's really the way you want to do it here. I mean, I don't know if there's any other, you know, setup here that could even work. I know at one point, like a joystick input, you could you could actually move the camera around with a joystick. If the game didn't give you an option that you liked, I'm not sure why you would do that 100%, but most games do have the option to move the camera. But hey, you could probably get real fancy with this thing in ways that I don't even understand. You can also do an output, different outputs. So if you have flight, you can use Sim Connect to connect to Flight Sim. I clicked there for this Free Track 2.0 sends out a signal that's similar to Track IR and their own software. So a lot of this, with the games working with it or not, the games have to be programmed to accept it. So when we look at the settings here, you can see you can send out both the free track or you can send out the Track IR. I believe the hat track and the other ones tend to work with the free track, and obviously I believe Track IR's software is proprietary. But again, somehow they're sending out, you know, a similar signal to the games, which I'm sure isn't proprietary. The filter, I really hadn't messed with it. I did in all my experimenting, but this Excella filter, which is kind of where it starts out, seemed to do the best. You can change some of these settings. I'll leave this up for a half a minute here just to show you what I ended up with. Is this the best? I don't know. The smoothing, I know I messed with. This is going to skip things. They have an explanation. It's not my intention to get into all of these filter settings and what you might change, and you're really not going to hurt anything by just moving it back and forth, trying different things. And you can start this thing up and then move things. So, you know, if I take this smoothing all the way up, you know, you can see how much slower these numbers are flipping, or maybe you can't, but they're not changing nearly as quickly as when I have this turned off. Like, looks like you can barely see them changing as it changes. So I think that's to stop some jitteriness if you don't have a steady signal, which is why your goal here is to really get a nice steady signal. And again, sensitivity, you know, rotation filtering. I'm not sure exactly what the benefit. You can see where I have mine. I'm not the right one to ask on the exact reasons for that. So I'm just going to hit cancel so I don't mess anything up. Now, the most important button is probably this one. So I sort of saved it for last. And this is where you're going to set up your camera. You have to select the camera, get your pixels. That's going to be based on each of your camera. But again, if you have a PS3i and you've modified it with the IR filter, here's my settings that are working for me. This slider bar, I did play with these, by the way, and found these to be best. So if you have a different camera, just it's not that big a deal to go playing with them until you start seeing this stuff appear. This slider, it filters out like it's a dark room, and it's just picking up probably who knows what. But you will see, you see I have it pretty high. That gives you a higher score here, but it also, if it was daylight, I'd have all kinds of little things reflecting off of wherever. Your hand will have IR light reflecting off of it. So I have found this to be a decent setting. This is another one. At first, when I had set my computer up downstairs, I had a signal from the overhead lamp that I had that was like a 42 signal. So you could turn this down so that it won't pick up, so you can set it in the range that you have right here. You can see my scores are at 7, 6, whatever. Hope that makes sense. So watch, if I change this one up to 8, see, it doesn't pick up anymore. That's what the camera image is, that's the image of my infrareds, but you notice that the software is just at that point ignoring it. So I'm going to put this back to not 40, but 4, and there we go. So I got my signals back. Now, the next thing, when you've built your own, or I know, Track IR, you can find out these dimensions, but you want to make sure that these are right. I put mine on a piece of paper because it's a little easier to draw some straight lines on the paper, and then make sure you're measuring measure off the paper is a little bit easier than trying to measure in midair, so to speak. Anyway, so that's what I did. Just put your right dimensions in. This should be straight. I don't think any of this is hypercritical, but the more accurate you can get this, it's not going to hurt. But I wouldn't spend 3 days measuring it either. Calibration, follow these instructions. Pretty simple. You just want to move your head down and around a little bit. And this will help the computer calculate this red dot here. And that's some kind of a theoretical point as to where my head is turning. So what you're doing with these screens here, this model screen, is really setting up the mathematics that the software is going to use to decide how you're moving your head. So it's pretty important to get this right. You'll see, you'll get it, and you'll get the octopus turning. Anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about when you do the calibration. Once you get to this point, so your first point's get your camera where you see the 3 dots. The next step's going to be get this set up so that you've got some semblance of it working. Now, there's a good chance that you're going to hit the calibration and you're going to go, what do you mean it's not working? The octopus is all messed up. Yeah, you might have to come back here if you're not happy with it, if you're fighting with your game settings later on. But this is really where you start. Just follow the instructions there, do it, and then move on, but you might have to come back. This is where you would change your different settings. So if you had a cap, track hat, cap, I don't know, you know what I'm saying, like a baseball cap with the 3 dots on it. That's where you would change that. Now notice this does affect. So this is actually a setting. So you really want to, one time I forgot I left it on, I didn't realize, I just thought it was like another index tab, not an actual setting. But you could see my octopus flips around, but you could go a half hour fiddling with stuff till you realize that you left that on cap. So put that on the right one. Don't be like me. There you go. Thank you, Patrick Ruoff, for letting this use your software. That's very nice of you. I definitely appreciate it. And here we are. So we're back. That's pretty much it. Get this working. Get a nice steady dots moving around, and you've got a pretty big part of the battle licked. So now you've got this set up. You got your calibration done. I'm going to hit cancel again so I don't save my settings. And that's the big part to get going. If you got this far, you pretty much have it in the bag. It's just a matter of fine tuning. Options, these settings are going to be per game. So I want to stop this for a second and explain the profile. I can create a new empty profile, which is like the default settings, or I could copy the game that I've already had. So you could, if we look in here for a second, you can see I started off with one flight sim and went to a second one because I figured, well, this one's working okay, but maybe I can get it working a little bit better. So while this one was selected, oh look, you can even see this is different. So watch this. Click here and you can see my setting changed to go to Flight Sim Connect. So I'm not sure why I even have this old one, and I don't even know really how to delete it. But I guess I could open up this configuration directory. Yep, there they are. So that's the configuration. All right, so anyway, you get the idea, I think. I'll switch back to Farm Sim. Why not, since that's what we started with. And that will change some of these options too. So these options here are fairly self-explanatory. My favorite one is center. Yeah, every time I start it up, you can see I've got like minus 22 pitch and it thinks I'm turning my head to the left. You know, so I try to get myself to a nice central position where I want to be playing the game. And you can do this while you're in game too. So in my case, I bound Control, Alt, and Home to, you know, to the key, to the center function. Toggle. Toggle is pretty nice too because it lets me turn my head. If you look at this number, and I'm going to hit page up in my case, see how it pretty much holds it there. It went down one number, but you can see my head's moving, but the output's not. And then the page down, or I'm going to hit the button again, so see now I move it. Okay. Page down is just toggle when held, is just hold it there until I let go of the button. Probably don't need both of these. Probably could get rid of this one. I usually just use that other toggle. So when you see me out in the field, if you watch my Farm Sim videos, you know, sometimes what I do is I just hit that toggle button and it holds the camera in the center or wherever I'm looking, which is kind of nice, especially if I turn my head. I find you turn your head, it's kind of goofy to look over to the right when you have your head turned 20 degrees. So you can hit that toggle button. See, now if I was in the game, I'm pretty much looking backwards at minus 177 here. That's what that's for. 0 just sends a 0 signal to the game, which means it puts you in the center looking forward position that the game thinks it is. Don't really use that again because toggle kind of holds it there if that's where you're looking. More often than not, I just want to look there. But again, that's an option for you. Start and stop tracking. You can do it from in the game. It's more or less just hitting these two buttons. Toggle tracking, I guess, is just toggles it on, turns it off. Don't really use that one. Restart tracking, not sure why you'd really need to do that, but okay. Relative translation off while held. I guess that's your up and down. Translation to me would be these TX, TY, TZ. So that must just, you know, if you notice, I turned it off in a different way, but there's the translation. But there might be a game where you want to be able to get in there and hold your head in a certain position in the cockpit or something, and then maybe turn this off. Anyway, I'll show you how I turned it off where we get 0 output signal here. Camera, this is a very cool one. You can see I have 10 here. These don't really end up doing anything because I zeroed this output out. So in Farm Sim, I found even just leaning back a little bit in the chair took me outside of the back of the cab. So with most of the games that I play, I really don't want to change my head position that much, though you could. I imagine Flight Simulator, if you got this set up nicely, but I don't know. I play games. I move my head looking at things around the room, and it just sort of, I don't know, just lean off to the left because your butt cheek's getting sore and it moves you out of the cab. So I just set that to 0. But anyway, I'm rambling. What this lets you do, if I put this up to 20, see how this changed this yaw to 18? So it lets you offset things, and this is important for certain games because you just might not like where the camera's pointing at. It might be pointing off to the left, and if you want to move it off to the right, like say I come up here and put in minus 20, so now I'm putting out a minus 20. Now that'll change relative to my head position, but what it effectively did was offset things. It's kind of similar to hitting the home button, but you know that just resets you entirely. You'll still have this 20. That's kind of resets. It resets it in a different way. This is more of changing it permanently to be looking to the left or pitching, looking up a little bit or looking down a little bit. That's what it lets you do. I played with this. There's a few. I found this experimental to be the most friendly, and this is more to do with your centering. So, I don't know. You could try it different ways if you're having an issue getting the octopus right here in the middle. So that's really your other goal, is to get your octopus right in the middle and working like you expect them to in the game. So there you go. Output. I have no earthly idea why you'd want to change these. However, maybe if you had a different input device, besides the point tracker, I imagine that might be why that's there. But if you have the point tracker, why you would want to make your pitch, your yaw, meaning when you hold your head up, why would you want it to turn to the right? This, I don't really know what this does, but I imagine it will have an effect on how your head moves around. I don't have it disabled. So it's saying translation is applied after rotation. So meaning, I guess that's saying it's, as this, you can see these things are kind of moving around. If I turn my head, I'm just turning my head. I'm not really moving it to the left and right, but you can see these things are moving left and right, because your head moves left and right. So I think it's something to do with that. So by disabling it, I think you're moving first, and then it's calculating the rotation. Probably would change things. For me, I left it off here. I really could turn these off just because it's really not something that makes any difference because I'm sending zero signal in this game. And again, what ultimate effect it has, I'd say try it out. What the heck? Game detection, this is, if they see this executable file go, it'll switch over to this FX2. Again, you can see I really don't have many games I play with it up on this computer, so it's not something that I, have too many of these programs. But you can add another one, and you browse through your computer, find a game, say, okay, when you see this exe, associate it with this INI file. So, hit the minus, there we go. And I'm just going to hit cancel because I really don't want to change any settings. So that was your options. And again, like I said, the biggest, best one, I guess you could say, is this one. Oh, I think I might have missed this. Project Cars, I think it was. Every time I turn my head to the right, it looked to the left and vice versa. So I ended up coming in here. You can invert it. So if I turn my head to the right, you can see this number's now negative. But I don't know if you can tell that, but the octopus is looking to the left. So some games you'll need that. So that's pretty key. And then the other important part here, once you go to set up your games, is, getting this going. You could make a permanent change. I don't really tend to mess with that. The invert, you'll change that if you turn your head in a game and it goes the wrong way. Nothing scientific about that. Mapping, pretty cool. You could change exactly how much output goes to the octopus, to the game right here. So if we go over to my Z, look, I put a dot there that just holds it down at 0. So that's actually how I don't move my head, translate it, meaning, move to the side or move to the right, as opposed to turn to the side. And you can see I have those all turned off. Same thing with the roll, which again is tilting your head. There's no benefit to twisting the camera in the game for me, in this game. I'm sure if there's other games and you want to be totally realistic, you can, but hey, there you go. You can change it to your heart's content. Pitch, here you can see I have asymmetric view, meaning that as soon as I start to look down from what I call my home position, I want the camera to move down, but I don't want it to move right away, just 3 degrees, not that much. But there you go. See, this guy's not moving at all up and down until I move my head a little bit extra. And by the way, this is looking up pretty darn far, which is 20 degrees, and this is looking up pretty far down, which is 25 degrees. So you can see, and you can play with that. If I didn't want this guy, see, there we go. Now I have to look even further down for the octopus to move. If you right-click on that dot, it gets rid of it. So, click and put a dot kind of anywhere. So now when it comes to looking up, it's gradual. As a matter of fact, this one I might even change because I kind of wanted to look up a little bit more. So I'm going to right click and hold this guy, just move him up to 80 degrees. Because in Farm Sim, when I'm moving it, sort of, I wish I could look up a little bit further at times. So there we go. Yaw, right and left. Now this one's not set asymmetric, so whether I look right or left, it's going to be the same thing. When I used American Truck Simulator, for example, was one that I didn't want asymmetric because as a right-hand driver in America, if I look over to the right, I really don't want to look any further than 90 degrees, especially not in one of those trucks. So as I look to the right, I just wanted to cap it out at 90. But when I looked over to the left, I wanted to be able to turn and have the view go 180 degrees. So you can see up here where this is set up at, well, it really should be 180, huh? There we go. So it's set up to go 180 degrees when I turn my head 20. So that sort of depends on, when you picture turning your head 20 degrees, I'm looking off of my monitor right now. So it's a little bit goofy to look back much further than that. If I turn my head even further, I'm looking off at the wall next to the computer. I can't even see the monitor other than out of my peripheral vision. So, but you can fine tune this, set it up to the way you like. And again, you can see I have a little bit of a dead spot there for the first 3 degrees. So if I just turn my head a tiny bit, it's not just wobbling the camera back and forth. Like you can see this wiggling. That might be me just having the jitters, so to speak. And it won't, it just won't wiggle the camera as much. But again, play with these. For each game, it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, I don't know, like Forrest Gump says, that's about all I have to say about that. I'm not sure what else I could add. I don't think I forgot anything. Again, take this, get this working, get your 3 dots. If you get your 3 dots like mine, nice and steady signals here, you're as good as gold. The other camera downstairs, the Logitech one, only has like 1.9. I think I might have mentioned that. And it works fine. And again, the problem there is that if you had an upstairs room, it's not going to do so great. And most people, I assume, won't be in their basement. But hey, if you got a nice dark basement room or, good shades, real good shades on your windows, you might get away with the cheapy camera that you already have. So, because by the way, even this one will pick up during the sunlight. Like I wear eyeglasses and it'll, if that light's shining even near my eyeglasses, it'll pick it up and mess it up. So there you go. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it's helpful. There's guys that know far more about it than me. None of these opinions are from an expert, but I hope, because it's not from an expert, I hope I covered like the real basics of what you need to do. And that's it. Get these dots, get your octopus looking in the center, and you'll be golden. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care of yourselves. Have a good day. Bye-bye.